Years off. Oh, yeah. Logo took it. Yeah. I went out to see somebody, he followed me out there. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah. That's my go-to guy when
That's right here. Can I not count to seven?
Yeah. You can always hook us up when he goes good.
Count to six. Oh, and Chef.
Yeah.
Okay. He's like. All right.
I went to school there.
I thought I was that good to count to six.
All right, we're gonna get started.
Okay, we'll go.
All right, good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, November the 7th, 2023, 6 p.m. I will call to order the Keystone Heights Airport Authority meeting, monthly meeting. Ask you to please stand for prayer and then pledge allegiance. Mr. Van Zandt, please do prayer for us.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this night, Lord, to gather here and conduct the business and affairs of the airport. Lord, we thank you for this little jewel in our community. We thank you for the business that happens here, the recreational flying that goes on, Lord, and for giving us the chance to do that, Lord. We thank you for our mayor and sheriff being with us tonight, Lord, and maybe some tenants. We just pray a special blessing on them, Lord. I pray that you be with Colonel Allen's arm, Lord. Help it to continue to mend. Lord, heal him physically in every perfect way. Lord, and thank you for our partners at Camp Landing and for our friends and comrades around the world tonight that are trying to help our neighbor and our ally, Israel, and our only friend over there, Lord. Just protect them in a special way, Lord. Help them to be able to retrieve the people that have been taken hostage and comfort those families that have lost so much. All these things we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Kuhn, will you do roll call, please?
Good thing. Mr. Kirkland?
Present.
Mr. Pryor?
Here.
Mr. Dodgenay?
Here.
Mr. Ludwig?
Here.
Mr. Van Zandt?
Here.
Mr. Seamer?
Here.
Roll call is complete.
All right, and we'll let our record show also Colonel Allen from Camp Landing is here. Thank you, Colonel, for being with us.
Thank you.
Mayor Nina Rodenroth from the city, and Bradford County Sheriff Gordon Smith is with us as well, and Frank Host from the Sportsman's Club, as well as Mike Sherbach and Bill Prane. So thank all of you for being here. I have not received any public comment cards. Mr. Kuhn, do you have any?
I do not.
All right. Moving on to item 2, the consent agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the September 2023 financials, also the October 3rd, 2023 Keystone Heights Airport Authority Board Meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
All right, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports, Mr. Prane, project updates.
So good evening, members of the board and the public. Update to you on the runway 1129 lighting project. Just as a reminder, we're removing and replacing runway edge lights, threshold lights, runway end identifier lights on runway 11, PAPI lights, and all associated underground wiring, conduit, cans, everything's being installed new. Project also by change order includes replacement of the runway end identifier lights on runways 5 and 23. And there are 2 additional taxiway guidance signs being added as part of the project. One is in the diamond-shaped surf island where Bravo comes off and meets the apron. And the other one is right out here adjacent to taxiway A, directional sign to the FBO. The contractor started on-site work Monday, a week ago, October 30th. And we've got a NOTAM issued through the last Friday of December. I think we're optimistic that we might outperform that by a little bit, but The contractor's still waiting for the delivery of light fixtures and the regulator. We have a workaround. If the regulator is delayed, we can energize the new system using the old regulator until the new regulator's installed, but there really is no workaround for a lack of light fixtures. So my guess is, based on the progress that I observed today, they've got a good 3 more weeks of preparatory work before we absolutely have to have light fixtures. So I'll stay on that every week and just give Craig updates as I get them. So far, they've done probably 90% of the demolition. The demolition process did generate some concrete. There's concrete associated with old sign pads, happy foundations, et cetera. Some of that's already been collected into a pile next to the vault building. Other pieces of it are still scattered around the runway environment. They haven't been picked up yet, but the contractor is going to deliver those to a location where the firm can make use of them, which seems like a good use of that material. And it's just a short haul to take it to part of the firm lease. So I'll keep coordinating that with Mike until we get that done. In addition to the demolition, the contractor has installed all of the new conduit and light cans on the east side of the runway. They've installed all of the conduit and cans that go down to the PAPI 11 runway on the far east side. They're probably, I don't know, maybe 50% complete with the runway edge lighting cans on the near side, the west side of the runway. And they haven't started the PAPI 29 yet, except for layout work. So they've got 2 crews working right now, which is a good thing. I think next year or next week, they'll drop back to just 1 crew. So again, it's kind of a slow and methodical process. They will have a concrete pour later this week on either Thursday or Friday morning. And I expect probably midweek next week, they'll have another concrete pour. So we've got a progress meeting with them scheduled for next Tuesday afternoon at 1:30. And we're going to meet with them in a formal setting every 2 weeks. But the project superintendent has been stopping up here on Monday mornings to talk to Craig and just give him an update so you know where they're at. I know Scott checks on them regularly. Some of you may have done the same. Does anybody have any specific questions about what they're doing? I'm sorry, one more thing to mention, and Mike probably knows the details. We did salvage a portion of the old light fixtures so that they could be kept for parts and replacement in the future. So I don't know how many of those you got, but I know you took a trailer over there and they salvaged
Probably have
pieces.
about 15 to 20.
Yeah, so historically, that's been a good way to keep it running over time, is to have a stock on hand. You can always buy new stock, but a lot of the fixture parts become interchangeable as manufacturers change, the stems don't change, the frangible couplings don't change. So Mike was wise to ask for some of that to be salvaged before the contractor threw it away. Any questions?
Only in addition, we're also going to keep the PAPI lights off of runway 11.
Okay.
Yeah, 29s failed. Well, we may even keep them, but we can
It's the board. that's
draw
the
boards from those.
Yeah, you're going to cannibalize the interior as needed.
And we also decided, and I think, in my opinion, it was generous of the contractor, but we're going to keep the old regulator as a backup. They may have been able to sell that as a used unit, but they allowed us to keep it. So we're going to keep it in the vault.
Keep it in the vault as a spare.
And that's a pretty pricey thing. What were we thinking, $15,000, $20,000?
A new one's 15,000, and what I have found that type of contractor does with that is they will always have their own stock of old regulators that have been taken out of systems, and if they get a customer that calls and says, hey, my whole thing blew up, what can you do? A lot of times they'll say, hey, we have an old unit on the shelf, we'll bring it out. And it has some value to them. The old one certainly is not worth 15,000, but my guess is they had an adequate stock of their own right now, and so it was just as well for them to extend a courtesy when you asked to keep it as a spare.
Yeah, I think that was very generous of them, so we appreciate that.
They're also gonna fix a sign that we noticed had a little problem with one of the legs, but I'm sure that'll come at no charge.
And that was on a previous install. That's on runway 1123. The other thing is, I know Mike said, what's the cost of an entire fixture? Isn't it about $300 a fixture?
That's just taxiway light.
Okay. So those parts he can salvage from there will be cost savings for the airport majorly.
And I've got my inspector is checking like twice a week over here, and I'm gonna be here at least once a week. I'll be back again next Tuesday. Don will be here either Thursday or Friday. He was here yesterday. But I've had a number of text messages and phone calls from the superintendent. He had a couple of questions on the layout. We were able to handle those over the phone. So we're maintaining contact with him that way, even though I don't have an inspector here full-time every day. Good. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sprang. We appreciate that. Ms. Whitney is not with us tonight from FDOT. Craig has been.
Was he gonna give us an update on the water and sewer, or did that go through my head? It's on the agenda here. I just didn't know if he was gonna address that.
It is?
It is.
Not on this agenda.
Oh, what is this, an old sheet?
Throw that one away, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, does everybody have this loose sheet? Okay, it's a gag on my part, never mind.
Mine's
All right.
November the 7th.
Yeah, I don't have a current agenda here for whatever reason, I don't know.
All right, we're going to move on. Ms. Whitney is not with us, but I will tell you that Craig has been talking with Ms. Donna frequently about a lot of things. He's going to address some of those in his report. So we'll move on to my items. I'm going to rearrange mine. I want to introduce the Bradford County Sheriff, Gordon Smith, for those of you that don't know him. I asked the sheriff, I don't know what, last month, sometime during a county commissioner meeting, about coming over and giving us an update on what's happening with Bradford County, since part of our airport is in Bradford. I know in the past, the sheriff's in his office has been really helpful to us. We had an issue 4 years ago with the firm. It was a noise issue, and talking with the sheriff, he said, hey, we've got a noise ordinance. And so it literally took the airport board out of that area of having to deal with all the residents in Thressa and their surrounding areas that were complaining. Appreciate the sheriff. He came over, met with their group and us, and since that time, we've not had another issue.
We worked it out. I'm not aware of any complaints. There for a while, we were getting a lot of them. But, they worked with us. Once they sat down and was serious and seen what we were dealing with, we kind of, that's what we're here for, to solve problems. You don't want to come in as the big bad bully. We all want to sit down. We all want to enjoy, live together, hopefully make a profit for our area and our community and the people that live here. So, because when the businesses are making money, the tax base, it helps improve our roads and ditches and everything else in our public services. So it's really, really important. This airport, this October made 37 years for me. I've served Bradford County. I actually started with Jennings Marie. Dolph Race didn't have a position at the time. Got hired by Jennings Marie. Then Dolph said, I'm in an election, brought me back. And I've been there ever since. So from Dolph to Kenneth Etheridge to Bob Milner, from Jennings Marie, who set me in his desk, at the front of his desk in an old couch and said, what means more to you, honesty or loyalty? And, so it goes back a ways with the old wheel gun. This is home. I can tell you I've had some adventures out here, some big drug busts back in the early days. Used to have a deputy that lived out here on the premises.
Yep.
They provided the water and sewer and the electricity, and, you could put back then we were single wides. We were poor. We didn't have $13,000 a year is what I started as. But you had that, you had somebody out here for that reason. But then one time we made a major drug arrest, and a short story, I'd stopped two guys back in my day with one man on duty. You went home at midnight. And then when Etheridge came on, you actually went from 5 at night till 5 in the morning. You was the only deputy out. And the only thing that stayed open past 11 o'clock was the Little Champ in Melrose. So the Putnam County deputy, Wayne Ivey, who's now the sheriff in Brevard County, would meet down there before he left, went to Clay. We'd all meet down at the Little Champ there in Melrose, Clay, the Alachua, Putnam deputy. That's where we knew what time to make our way that way. But from the adventures that we've had out here, from the skydiving accidents to the Delta plane crash, Bradford County had 3 plane crashes in one day. I was the only deputy working, had one over in Brooker. Actually, he was hauling dope and his little Piper crashed. Then there was an air show out here. And that code that comes across, you never hear of. The first time I had to look it up, so what is she sending me to? Had to look it up, and then I said, well, I'm going to watch the air show. And on the way here, had 2. One Bob, when he should have weaved or something, 2 of the old antique models out here. That's been a long time ago. So it's got a lot of history. Still got a Timex watch from one of the skydivers. The family didn't want to recover it, and that watch was still ticking. They was going to throw it away. I don't know. It was one of the weird things. I said, I'm going to say that Timex till the battery finally wore out, still ticking. So I've got a lot of history here, but stopped 2 guys one night. Lonely by myself, stopped them, started questioning them. Everything was getting kind of antsy. I called Clay. We had the mole radios back then. The portables didn't work. So I got in my car and called for a backup. Clay was sending one to me. Well, that time a fight call came out. So I had to leave. But I'd ran the 2 names. And before it came back, and I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, I get called to the sheriff's office, and there's some feds sitting in there. I said, it was on my day off. I said, Sheriff, what's it? And they want to talk to you. And the guy said, do you recall stopping a car? Because back then with the old teletype, they could run it and see who had stopped the bad guys. And I said, yeah, they showed 2, back then, the old black and white photos. Yeah, those 2 guys I stopped down at the Keystone Airport. He said, well, the one guy was an escaped murderer out of Missouri. And they came here, was waiting on a drop, back the way they did back in the old days. And we caught the one guy, and he said, yeah, they said that they knew you was running their names. They were armed. They were planning on shooting it out with you there, right down here at the Keystone Airport. So you don't know how close you come sometimes in regards to it. And then another night, we thought we had a big deal. And so we got a call about lights coming and going. Something's on. So I shot across to that east part way back there. And it was the National Guard. They were flying in and picking up some girls and flying back over to, not the helicopter pilots would do that. It might have just been my misunderstanding, I'm sure.
I'm sure
in the way it was.
You didn't get the proper AAR.
Protecting and serving, yes. So the Keystone Airport is very, very important to it. I left y'all some books. That's just some stuff that we put out in Bradford County. We are one of the larger budgets. I do believe that the citizens have a right to know where their tax money is being spent, what type of calls we have, so all that's in that book. But along with that, also, we just created our new strategic plan. You know, you gotta know where you're going, gotta have some kind of vision, or you stay stuck in the mud. So we just put our new one out, and the county is trying to catch up to us to get where they put some work into theirs, but ours, I give an opening, but my staff does the majority of it. I'm a blessed sheriff. I got the best sheriff's job in the state, as it comes to being a sheriff. And we got a great relationship here. I'm telling you, with the new sheriff in Alachua County, Emory Gainey, Gator Deloach, and Putnam, Sheriff Cook does a tremendous job down here in Clay County. And what we have, and I've been here a while, and the working relationship we have is really remarkable. From the way our radio systems work, to the way we have our interoperability, to the way we have our mutual aid. We don't let boundaries. We sign a 4 corners mutual agreement that, you know, if you say, hey, Gordon, someone just, you know, broke into my car, stole out of it, and I was down here at the gas station, and we said, who was it? All we do is Radiohead and say, hey, we're going down into Keystone, we're gonna grab up, you know, Johnny Snot Bucket and him and his partner, and we're gonna put him in jail. So we have that kind of relationship now. We don't let the boundaries stop us and slow us down. Before it was always having to stop, get permission, get mutual aid, do all those things. But now with that agreement we have, I can give you one example. We had the Winn-Dixie, had a lady robbed there. We got some good descriptions. Alachua County was tied up on something else and had nobody that in the Alachua County. And our investigator said, we're going to go get them. When the RV resort had several of the RVs and people were stealing out of their cars and stuff that were breaking in. Got to give kudos to the RV resort. They spent some money and bought some technology that we didn't have at the time. Now we got them all over our county, but at the time we didn't. We got in a pursuit. Bad guys jumped running on one deputy. We took the computer out of the car, which was a stolen car, took the computer, because that ain't just your phone anymore. That little GPS device now you have in your car. So we took it, put it on the computer in Jacksonville the next morning. We knew exactly where those guys were going every night. That wound up solving multiple robberies, several stolen guns, all that kind of stuff. And 2 of the juveniles were charged as adults. One of them just got a lengthy sentence. I'm not sure about the next one. And the adults facing life. it solved more for Alachua County and over in the city of Gainesville than an actual, but they were hitting several RV resorts. They knew that was high value. They found their niche. But the stolen car they had and the computer in it, we took it, was right down in Melrose and backside. We were able to go right to where they were parking that car every night. Told us everywhere they went. And we used it as evidence to show that, well, they were here, they backed up 20 feet, they pulled, it tells you everything. It's scary to what you get out of that computer out of your new vehicle. They use it against you. If you get in a wreck, they can tell you how fast you're going, how fast when you applied the brake, how far you skid. So it's a tool that we used. Of course, it was a stolen car, so the dealership didn't mind us taking the computer out of the car.
Sheriff, let me ask you to elaborate on something at the last county commissioner meeting, last one, not today's, but there was an announcement about Emergency Operations Center that is being proposed for here on Speedville Road at that fire station. And can you tell us a little bit about that? And
I can. We, 2 years ago, the legislature, there was 9 counties that their emergency operations centers didn't meet the requirements. Bradford County being one of them, Union County, Columbia County, Gilchrist, there were several counties. So they appropriated us the money to come up with the plans and drawings, and we did. Last year we didn't apply, and the year before we did, and we had them. We're kind of sitting on hold. Where were we gonna put it? How do we let's watch what the other counties do, see what mistakes they're making. We get appropriations, we don't want to get ourselves in a fix that some of the other places got into. We want to make sure we get our money and move forward. So we've looked at a couple of places here in the south end. One's the old landfill. There's some area that was never used for the landfill, which butts up right there to the rails to trails. And the other location is where the fire station is one area. We haven't done any of the groundwork yet, testing, those kind of things. So somewhere, and the reason we picked this into the county, one is it's our fastest growing.
that's going to be my next question. What's prompted the location?
It's one of the fastest growing, but it's also one of the safest. Hence Brooker gas plant, one of the most dangerous places we have. Hampton, the protein plant, labeled the #1 most dangerous place we have. Stark, bypass railroad tracks, those type of things that we have to encounter. Down here, we don't worry about the flooding that we do in the city of Stark.
Yep.
Brooker's no flooding, but we got that big gas plant, one big explosion, and we dealt with that one time in my career out there. The Hampton protein plant, I can name about 5 people that are dead working at that plant from exposure, and some that were seriously hurt. If that place ever goes up, we don't have enough equipment to put it out. All we can do is stand back and evacuate everybody else around it. It's dangerous, so we have to look at places that would be the biggest value for us and safest, where we can still control the county ops. And with the 4 county corners down here, this is growing. There's not gonna be a Speedville. I just spoke at their homecoming back out, took my birthday, October 7th. I told them, there ain't gonna be much Speedville much longer, there ain't gonna be much homecoming. It's house to house to house to house and growing, and they're selling.
Yep.
Don't blame them. Some of them families are getting out. So we have to look at all that. It's great. There's some forces that say, oh, we want it in Stark. That's great, but we're gonna contend with the same issues we have right now. By law, we're supposed to have 2 PSAP, public safety points. Bradford County for years has only had 1. We're supposed to have 2 in case one goes down. The setup we have now is we have to jump in a mobile motorhome or command post that we've got wired up for it. But if it happens right now, we're still 3 to 4 hours before we could get up, even operate somewhat effectively. Where do we take it? Where do we plug in? Those type things. So those are issues we've all been looking at. Of course, I am getting hit by other commissioners. Well, what about Laudy? Well, Laudy's got its issues too, the railroad track and the flooding. Laudy's our most flood prone area we have. It's a lot of those things that we have to look at. And if we're going to get the appropriations and invest the time and effort, we need to put it in the most viable place in the county. Take the politics out of it. As I say, most things work pretty efficiently. If you keep the politics out of it, the day-to-day people get the job done. So we're looking at that. There is some politics in play, but I'm hoping, we've looked at it. We studied it, did the dangerous stuff. If the if Brooker went up, if Hampton goes up, something happens in Stark, train derails. We have to look at all those things. And
neither of those sites work out. We've got some really nice sites.
well, that was something I was gonna bring out here. That would be a great location for us. It really would.
You've staged your mobile headquarters here before during the storm.
We have. And
command.
And at the time, it didn't even, I'll be honest with you, it didn't come across, but somewhere in this general vicinity is where we have to be. Yeah, for safety reasons. And the airport's a great place. So that's not out of the picture because none of the site work's been done. If we get the appropriations, and then it'll be the politics of such as your board saying, hey, we have, you know what I'm saying? Because we just need water. That's the big thing. The sewer's not that big an issue because the sand and what you have to do is retention. Out here it's sand. There's not a whole lot to it. So those are I'm not sure what kind of water we have out here. That'd be the only issue.
It's well, we're working on
That would be the one
sewer,
thing.
that's one of our.
They were trying to do that, but I come to find out at the fire station, it's a 2-inch temporary line they tagged in there and they haven't brought through no bigger line. We thought about we could tie into the Salvation Army if we went to the landfill, too far. So there's some things that we may still have to use the water tank, and out here would be an ideal location with the paved road in and out. So that's not off the table. Everything's up in the air for that. Once we get the money, then we need to start looking and doing site testing and site prep work and those type of things in regards to it. But the airport and what it means to us, I can tell you some of the things we've done. I did a 3-year, I had communications lady go back and just pull the last 3 years. November 1st, 2020 to now, we've been called out here for 7 reckless drivers. We've had 3 vehicle unlocks. If somebody locks their key in their car, we do offer the service of unlocking cars. We don't have a locksmith in our county that's mobile. And to be honest with you, most people can't afford it. You ever called one lately? It's $100-something bucks.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Every deputy's there. They check your ID, run your tag. We have the same equipment they have. Every patrol car gets outfitted. They pull it up in their laptop in their car. They have the app there, says they drive X, Y, Z. It's a bad thing is the kids and bad guys get it too. Tells you exactly what tools to use. Sign a waiver and they unlock your car. We do about 600 of those a year. Wow. Bradford County. You're paying us already. We work for you. We had 13 suspicious incidents or persons. If somebody's seen somebody out here, somebody's called, somebody's riding around that shouldn't be, it just looks out of place, I'd much rather you call us. It gives us a reason to stop and check them out. So over the 3 years is that. We've had what we call 7 serious traffic crashes. We say serious, that's when rescue, not fender benders, these are serious. That's when fire and rescue's also been called. And I can tell you that all of them are right down on 100. And none of them are good. So that's just in 3 years. And then we've had 4 smoke fire investigations, which I think 2 of those were aircrafts that come in and smoking and puffing and they call. Usually it's nothing, but like I say, you have fire rescue right here, you call, get the fire department here. You think it's just smoke, but it's something else. So those are what we've basically responded to is a low call area. We don't have a lot of maintenance other than patrol. In that 3 years, there's been over 2,000 property checks. That means deputies rolling through, checking the property, clear it. The unique thing with their laptops now and GPS and all the cars, you can't clear that call. When you say signal 31, which to us is checking the location out, when you call in, it's marking where you're actually at. Like we have somebody do a property check, they can't clear that until they're somewhere in the vicinity of that place to check it and clear it. Then it clears off their laptop beeping. So it's a checks and balance. All the cars are GPSed. Their radios that are on their side are GPSed. If somebody calls me and says, Sheriff, that deputy come by me at 100 miles an hour. Pull it up and you go, no, they came by at 98, but they were going to X, Y, Z. You know, sometimes you don't want your sirens on when you're responding. And I can tell you, just anybody that's been in public safety, in the public safety profession, a lot of times the sirens cause people to wreck. I'm easier to get around them faster in my truck if I'm not blowing the lights of siren half the time. Because you're not scaring them. They jam on brakes in front of you. And I've been guilty. Look up and it's there and I'm trying to get out of the way. It's these cars are airtight. It ain't like our old truck. We can tell how fast we're going by the revving of the motor. So some of us in this room are old enough to understand. We knew how fast we were going by the sound of the motor. But now these cars are so airtight. We're speeding. We don't know it. They're so much smoother. Roads are so much better. People say, "Oh, yes, I get it." And it's like anything else. I remember they built one road in Bradford County. I don't mind the Sampson City Road. Everybody was fussing. Oh, there's going to be there's going to be a raceway. There's going to be more wrecks. There's going to be whatever. I said, believe it or not, they're going just as fast on that dirt road as they're going on that hard road, and the accidents cut down to 2/3. 2/3. You know, it's amazing because the road's better. They can hang the road, it's better than a dirt road. Those type things, yes, it does increase speed, kind of deal. I'm not a big speed bump person. I can promise you, if you ever had speed bumps by your house, you will ask us to come move it.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? And I have to fight with my commissioners all the time. Well, look, before you do that, you've got to understand, you know, it's the acceleration and deceleration and the trailer they're pulling and the trailer hitch that's not tight, it rattles. The stereo that's booming, you get to hear it 3 times as long. If they're doing their rap music and it's rattling your windows, it's gonna rattle 3 times as long because they're slowing down. So deceleration, they go over the hump, everything rattles, the toolbox and everything they got in the trailer. And then when they accelerate, you got the acceleration in regards, in the music that they're blasting, you hear it 3 times as long. So not a big fan of speed bumps. Some commissioners don't get it.
So one of the things on my item is appropriations. We're going to talk about that. And I want to just publicly thank the sheriff. I did at the commission this morning, Bradford County Commission, the letter of support that the sheriff wrote for our appropriations request. I'll talk about that in specifics in a little bit, but I want to publicly thank the sheriff for his office and the letter of support to Representative Brannon and Senator Bradley about our request. And because it does impact State Road 100, it really impacts our entrances and the numbers that he just threw out. So Sheriff, we do appreciate that.
I can't believe they didn't put in the last time to repave. I just knew they were gonna put, it only makes sense anymore. With the speed of the road, you see it in other areas, you go, okay, if they can do it there, why did they not go, especially for all the special events and the traffic, this place is only getting busier. And as it grows, it's only gonna get busier.
Correct.
More impactful. And it, you know, if it saves one life, you know, then we've done something. And people say, what do you mean just one? Well, you know, it's what if it's yours?
Yep.
Yeah, so I just want to say thanks for what y'all do in our community. It definitely makes a difference. It makes an economic impact. Anybody doesn't see, that's blind.
Right.
So on behalf of us, thank you. If we can ever do anything from the sheriff's office, all I gotta do is call. We're gonna come. This is home to us, and we're gonna do whatever he's asked of us.
I have to say, I've called a couple of times on vehicles, like you say, that are parked in unusual places, and your response times are always fantastic.
Yeah, we've got 4 deputies out. There's a supervisor, you got a south end, you got a north end and a west end. You know, so they can back up each other and rotate and do those. We've grown over the years. We're not huge, big enough to serve you, still small enough to care. But here's the unique thing. If there's something that definitely gets tied up, it's so instantaneous now. If there's a Keystone deputy, he's coming. If it's Putnam County, Luttrell County, you see the different cars. It's so streamlined to what it used to be. Back in my days, it would take forever just for call the old dispatch. Dispatch had to get on a phone call. Because of technology, that is really enhanced. And we do events out here, it's streamlined. Our people know their people. It really works well. And Keystone is the, you know, the sister to Bradford. Because basically, I've grown up in Keystone my whole life. Back they had pretty girls. You understand that? So we sneak over here. And I still call it the accident vehicle. We still like to beat them up in football and basketball and weightlifting. But that's brotherly love. In the way we do it. So if you see me stand on the sidelines, I wear a uniform on Keystone Bradford County night. If I'm at a Bradford County game and playing somebody else, I'm usually in my red. But I got as many voters that have a Keystone address. There's 100-some registered voters in that darn RV park now.
Wow.
Pay attention where they're I get paid to be nosy. But seriously, any questions of me, I'm here.
One thing I want to add, so we have a couple of local pilots. They're both flight instructors. Was that Irma that went into Fort Myers? Is that the right hurricane? Ian. Yes, thank you. So one thing you may want to consider, so we as pilots, we're very aware of elevation above sea level. And so this airport is 196 feet above sea level when we set our altimeters for takeoff. One of the things that Grant and Jay told me, and this is something I hadn't thought about, when that hurricane hit, a lot of the roads were impassable. So somebody, I think it was an independent, like a 501c3, had set up a rendezvous point at an airport not at Fort Myers, but near there and inland where it had been unaffected. If you had an emergency operations center, the airport is high and dry, and they were flying water and supplies in to help the county distribute it because even semi-trucks couldn't get in through some areas because the water was so deep. So we always brag about that with an airport is, and of course, this is the alternate emergency operations center for the state over at Camp Landing.
Governor.
So if you had your thing here, giving us a
Nice
plug
staging
here.
location.
Well, you are high here.
Indeed.
This is on the Highland Ridge right here. This is about as high as it gets until you get up way out in West Florida. But this is about one of the highest elevation. I mean, if I go to St. Augustine and fly in there, they're 11 feet above sea level. Even Gainesville's 156 feet above sea level. Black, I think, is 126. We're up here. So,
Yeah, and besides, before
something to
we just looked at
consider.
water, but now we come to find out the water's not like we thought it was. I think everything's up in the air. It wouldn't it wouldn't take much to persuade that it's a beautiful area to have. And if we gotta build a water tank anyway, we can move it pretty much. And we want it high and dry, and this is great for staging.
Right.
Actually, I know with the fair, all that stuff going with the fair board and all that, we're like, hey, if that was to revert, we could use it for appropriations to pave everything. There's a lot that the county can do with paving and do emergency management. A lot of things. I've got half a dozen drone pilots now. I didn't realize you got to take the pilot test.
True.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
too hard for me. But them young guys, they got it and had to pass that same thing as a flight test for flight. We got a big drone program.
Right.
We operate 6, 7 drones, getting access to get over Blanding, to get over prisons. Now we train with the K9 dogs at the prison. You know, when a bad guy's running, you think you can hear that drone, but when he's running traipsing through the woods, he ain't hearing that drone. And they got FLIRs on them, lights, the whole 9 yards, in retrospect to it. So this would be, actually, we were looking at water before, but now we found out the 2-inch pipe's not gonna be sufficient. They never have updated that, the Clay County Utilities. And the place at the landfill, they said it's too far, we cost way too much money to get it, it goes to the Salvation Army. So there's some things here as we move forward, if we get appropriations, we may be coming before the board to ask if there's something. It's about 8,000 square foot facility that will have, a multitude of everything in it. I know they wanted to get it toward the I won't be politically incorrect, the storage facility, fire station, whatever they want to call it. The boondoggle that all got messed up down there for a couple of years in regards to it, but now they're going to add sleeping quarters to that, so that we don't have to have that option to do that. So.
Well, I knew, I'd heard, being at the commissioner meeting, that they were gonna need some additional acreage that they had already talked to the school about. And rather than the conglomeration that they have there, I just thought I would throw it out, that we have a really clean site.
I see, it's beautiful.
And,
We don't catch no parkers no more. You just come back and catch all the people parking, but.
All the trees are gone. You used to
yeah,
hide
the trees
them.
are gone, so.
But hey, let's keep that talking on the table, because I think it is viable as we move. We'll know sooner this year because the legislative session is sooner.
Right.
Because of election year. With that being sooner, we'll know more about the appropriations in March, April. And if we get approval on that first aspect of it, we've got to start looking. So just keep that. I think it's a very real conversation that needs to be had about that.
We can accommodate you.
It'd be a beautiful place, and for staging would be great for us for just what he was talking about.
Yep.
Not only the
We've got a
plane,
lot
but
of-
the trucks, we got stuff we can park and move when the state of Florida gets, when it gets activated. They start moving trucks and stuff full of tents, campers, trailers, cookers, ice, all that kind of stuff.
We've got a lot of land here, so.
Yep.
And if you're coordinating with the Florida National Guard, they're right across the fence. The kilos can land here, whatever you need.
We don't do much without the National Guard.
So-
We've got a great relationship with them. Matter of fact, they're fitting to start a new building. They're gonna be breaking, I just got an invite to their groundbreaking for the drug training facility that's gonna be out there. There for years, so.
All right, any other questions for the sheriff?
No, I'm gonna get out y'all's hair.
Thank you.
Sheriff, you're welcome to stay, but you're
Got some extra
welcome
books
to go.
there, that reading material. If you got any questions, y'all can call me anytime. Nice meeting you, Matt.
Yes.
For coming.
Yes, sir, you sure
I didn't
can.
know you were gonna be leaving, because when I get to my part, what I'm gonna be talking about is emergency response plan. I've reached out to the EMS providers, and I know at some point we'll probably reach out to you guys as well. And I just want to be able to get a point of contact. And I know it's different because the shift that you guys work is a lot different than like the fire department rescue shift. So, I guess we'd have to try to figure out the logistics on
We
that.
got ride-alongs, they got sleepovers.
Yeah.
Fireman, you know how it is. But, yeah, so it is different, but Brad Witt is our emergency management director. He's in there.
I've got his contact.
You got Brad Witt, and then Ben Carter's. Those two can work out just, you won't find better people to work with.
Yep.
Right.
Fire chief.
Man, those guys have
Ben
been to a
Carter's
lot
the
of
fire
our,
chief.
Okay, take you to Blue Water Bay tomorrow night.
Yep, he plays on Wednesday nights in Blue Water Bay. Got to pay, that man can play.
And he's good.
He's real good. And then Brad Witt is our emergency management director.
Okay.
is George Conkey still there? or-
He's still there. He's still a major. He works, he's out in the
Sometimes
panhandle right now.
George has worked with us a lot of times out here at the
He
airport.
does all of our special events.
And you're gonna want, John Ward for Clay County.
Yeah, John's not
Oh,
there.
he's not there anymore?
Gone.
Did he finally retire or did he leave?
He's
Yeah,
retired.
Mike
Okay.
Ladd's out there.
Yeah. He retired, but Brad Witt will have all those contacts. and
Okay.
They all got their little
Yep.
circle of,
Yep.
they all communicate pretty regular.
Yeah.
But we're here to help anything we can do.
Sheriff, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Y'all coming. Come
All right.
Appreciate your service.
Good to see you, sir.
Take care.
Your dad, hello.
I would do it.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move into the appropriations update. Kind of piggyback off what the sheriff was talking about. Craig and I have met with Scott Cornegay. Scott Cornegay, in turn, had been working with CHW, the engineering firm that Bradford County uses, that was involved in completing the new access road project. So when they were doing all the design phase work, they also included the interconnect road between the new access road and the existing airport road. So all of those drawings have been done. That design work is completed. The other thing that they included for us was the cost to connect the new access road to State Road 100, and that entrance would have turn lanes, slow down and turn lanes. Our existing airport road, they also included rehabilitating that to include slow down and turn lanes as well. So that totaled up to $3.5 million. That's what our appropriations request is. We've, Craig and I have put together the forms for Senator Bradley's office. There's a separate form for the Senate side, separate form for the House of Representatives side. All of that is complete. We have letters of support from the Sheriff's Office as well as Bradford County Commission. Chairwoman Andrews signed that letter today. We'll be getting that to Craig. The deadline for the House of Representatives appropriations is November 13th. Is that correct, Craig? The Senate doesn't have a deadline. Kind of interesting. We talked to MD Lee, Senator Bradley's #1 legislative aide. So we're still going to get all of those documents to both of their offices. We are also going to include a copy to Representative Bobby Payne. We lost Representative Payne with the redistricting, but he still has part of Clay County, I believe. He's always been a great supporter of the airport when he covered Bradford County, so we're going to include him just to get him in the political loop so that when that funding at least comes before committees, maybe they can use some of their senior leadership and get that pushed further down the approval process. So that's the latest that we have on that. And I want to say special thanks to Craig, jumped right on this. And with some previous years, we looked at information, put it all together. Special thanks to Bradford County for CHW, their engineering firm, having those numbers for us, actual dollar amounts that we could document our request. So all of that's in place as well. So we're hoping that the state has another good surplus budget year and that funding will come through for us. The next thing is, I'm just going to go backwards here. Approval for airport property appraisal. next year, May 31st of 2024, the original lease with the firm will expire. That's a 25-year lease. That included 285 acres. It's pretty well split up. The majority of it, I guess, of that is where they have the racetrack, where they have a couple of garages, where they have administration, offices. The other part is parallel to 1129. That's their off-road course. So all of that is part of the 285 acres that is in that lease that is expiring in May of next year. One of the things that we need to do is we need to have that 285 acres appraised. There is basically one major appraisal firm that specializes in aviation. They're located in Miami. We have talked with Andy Magenheimer. It's with Slack and Johnson and Magenheimer. They've done work. Mr. Prane can speak to their expertise all over the state of Florida, the Southeast. You can't hire just a regular property appraiser to do appraisal work on an airport. It's just different. So we talked with Andy Magenheimer, and he has used a gentleman, Stephen Albright, who is out of Ocala, and he has worked at the Gainesville Airport. He's worked at the Ocala Airport, done a lot of appraising there. And so we've received a quote actually from Mr. Albright to do the 285 acres for an amount of, he said within a range of at least $4,750, but not to exceed $5,450. Delivery date would be within 6 to 8 weeks from receipt of a signed contract. And I believe you had gotten a copy of that in your packet. You have a copy of this quote from Mr. Albright. So what we need to do to get this moving, we need to have current appraised property value as we prepare our negotiations for if the firm wants to renew their lease. So we need to get this done first, then we're going to get the attorney involved, and then go from there as far as the process of what we're going to propose. One of the things we're looking at, rather than do all 285 acres again, we're going to split it up, because Craig and I have had some meetings with some people from the Guard, as well as some other Clay County Development. That's a valuable piece over here now on 1129, and because that property backs all the way back up to Camp Landing, then there's some potential leasees that would want that area of property rather than somewhere else, because we really don't have any large parcels along 523. We have just a few places. So that's another reason when we sit down to do the negotiations, we want to split this 285 acres up. And so that'll be part of something we'll bring back to the board to keep you guys in the loop as Craig and I work with the appraiser on that and moving forward. So any questions about the appraisal?
This is not necessarily for the appraisal, but just on this topic. Because of the fact that this airport does straddle two counties, how does it work, like right now with the firm? Does money that comes back for them leasing that land, does all of that money come back here, that it comes to the Keystone Airport, or does that money go to Bradford County? How does the airport?
So the lease amount comes directly to the airport. Mm-hmm. The firm does pay ad valorem taxes to Bradford County. Mm-hmm. For their properties.
So any new businesses that come along, as you're talking about, if you're splitting up and we start adding different businesses, would that all be set up where it would be the same way, to where the money is coming back to the airport?
Yes.
Okay. Because it's just, I know the design and the layout of this, it makes it to where you have two completely different counties, and it's, with it all being within one county would be one thing versus this, so I'm trying to kind of get up to speed on how all that works, so, because I know with all of the development, you're, talking about with the new access like that, that opens up potential for a tremendous amount, and just kind of would like to kind of get up to speed on how all that goes.
Property,
To keep it simple, the city of Keystone Heights owns the airport. That just keeps it simple.
Yeah,
it's only the taxes, that go.
yeah, they go to the other, okay.
So, for instance, where I'm at, my house is in Clay County. I used to own the property across the street, but it's Bradford County. If I had a rental house back there, I'd still get the money, still my property. Same thing out here. So, the only benefit is wherever that line goes, Bradford County would get the tax revenue, and on this side of the line, Clay County gets the tax revenue. We get all the rental or the lease amounts.
Correct. So any other questions about hiring the appraiser?
I have a question about the appraisal. Will their shooting range be included in the land you appraised?
No, it's not a part of this particular lease.
It's part of their lease.
It's one of 4 leases they have. Yeah.
Depending upon what the lease starts, like they've added on, so that lease may not come up until 4 years from now, or maybe 10 years from now, however long the lease is, so.
And that's part of that negotiation too, is to sit down with them. We don't know if that will be Lorena, who is the manager there, or the actual owner. I'm sure it will involve him. He's an attorney as well. So part of that conversation, though, is to look not only at this 285 acres, but to look at all of their parcels as well. All right.
Dave, do you have any idea how much it was appraised at 25 years ago, just for purposes of negotiations? Maybe
It
not.
wasn't.
It wasn't?
And literally, we've got file folders in there that are, if you put them side by side, it's about this wide.
Because I'm sure it would be quite different,
Some of the original documents.
way, way different.
Yep.
In 2011, there was an appraisal done at the airport that did include all of that property.
It was an appraisal based on, it didn't break it out as far as aviation, non-aviation, civiculture.
Wasn't the appropriate person doing the appraisal?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. Well, we just have to be ever mindful in this day and age. Whatever we lease amount we tie to something has to be, fair market value, done the right way. So nobody can come against this airport authority and say, hey, you rented it to that guy because you've been friends with him forever and you didn't charge him enough. That kind of thing. Yeah,
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Van Zant, because the FAA has specific guidelines with respect to fair and market value that airport property has to be rented at. So all of those guidelines are going to be part of the whole package that we're going to prepare and have available for those negotiations, because that's huge. The FAA actually has to oversee, but they have to at least look at every lease of that caliber. T-hanger leases, they don't get involved with that. But ground leases, they want to see every one of them.
The other thing to consider back then is the activity that was going on at this airport 19 and a half years ago might have prompted the current board then, I don't want to say to give them a sweetheart deal, but any income they could get, they were happy to get. So
I may or may not have been on the airport board back then.
But you know what I'm saying? They might not have used.
Terms would have never flowed out of the 32-year-old Charlie Vincent's mouth because I didn't know him.
Gilbert Lee was the chairman at the time, so I think you served with Gilbert.
No, Gilbert abandoned ship. He patted me on the back at breakfast in the Keystone Inn and said, you could think about being on the airport board. And I went to Fort Rucker for a couple of weeks and came back and read in the monitor that I was. That's how that worked.
You had your hand up, you had a question?
Yeah, do we have to make a motion for this to expend to expend this money?
Yes, we had budgeted in our budget that we would have funds for doing an appraisal. And so we do need a motion to move forward with hiring Mr. Albright to perform the appraisal.
So, and I'd like to say, because I think this needs to be worded in a certain way. I mean, if the end of the discussion's there, I would like to make the motion, but I'd like to do it in a certain way. But if that's okay with everybody.
Any other questions, Mr. Seymour? Do you have another?
No.
Okay.
I was just gonna make the motion.
Oh, okay.
I'd just like to get a little more specifics in it. So I would like to make the motion, and it is Albright Associates.
It's, yes.
So I'd like to make a motion that Albright Associates be awarded the appraisal as a sole source not to exceed $5,500 for the appraisal of said lands. Because I believe it is a sole source the way you described it.
That's correct.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right.
Thank you for letting me do that.
And one of the things, I'm glad that the verbiage was listed that way because in our purchasing manual, and we're going to talk about some stuff here next about that, but when we do have a sole source and it exceeds a certain, well, if an amount exceeds a certain value, then we typically have to have 3 informal bids, except if that service is only being provided or can only be provided by one firm, for example, that had the qualifications to do that. So.
And sole source could be defined, we used to run into it at the power plant. Sometimes there's only one company that makes that widget, period. The other way is it would be considered sole source for logistics and it's reasonable, in a reasonable term. Like there may be a company out in Maui, Hawaii that could do it, but it's not reasonable. So that would again make it sole source by logistics and reasonableness.
Right. All right. So Mr. Kuhn, if you'll
Reasonability.
move forward with that tomorrow. I believe on his document, there was a place there to sign. So
I just had it brought up on my emails, what I was looking at, so.
you can sign that document if you want to and go ahead and get it to him.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. The last thing on my agenda here is Craig came to me and with Mike Sherbach as well, as we've had things fail here at the airport and we need to replace them. We look back into what our purchasing guidelines are with respect to what the airport manager is authorized to spend. I know the city changed this just a year or 2 years ago, but where the city manager could actually spend, I think it was up to $10,000, but I know it was increased for the very same reason. We all know the cost of things and goods and services have gone up. So we wanted to bring this to the board for discussion. In your handout, you should have gotten a copy of,
You don't have one.
you got 2 pages.
Do you mind if I just let me do this?
And these are chapter 4 and chapter 5 out of our purchasing manual. So I want to call your attention to chapter 4, section B, item 1. Talks about all purchases that are equal to or less than $2,000 shall follow the purchase regulations as described in 4B2, except that no informal quotes are required. What we're looking at is changing that $2,000 to $5,000. Any questions or thoughts about that?
So one of the reasons, and I actually was, I think, the catalyst for this, but Craig
I would agree with
and
that,
I
by
had
the way.
talked. Well, the only reason I say that is.
Mike was going to chime in on that for us.
Is I know we had this problem at the power plant. So that was a much bigger purchasing force, but the problem was buyers were having to get approval for such small dollar purchases because inflation had overwhelmed us, that it was creating a backlog. It isn't that you still don't, he'll still be required to go out for 3 bids if he can get those. But it gives him the threshold of approval up to a more reasonable rate. Case in point is you needed a new server, and we have some cameras down. And so if we did everything at one time, your hands were tied, you would have to wait till another board meeting. And we don't want to have a special board meeting every time. Something that still, unfortunately, in this day and age is considered reasonable because of a dollar threshold or a, gosh, I lost the word tonight, but it creates a hurdle.
Yeah.
So it's not that he wouldn't still be required to do 3 bids or more, but it just allows him to do it at a higher threshold.
Right.
Or,
just out of curiosity,
Let me.
can you say, when was this edition written?
That edition was written, I think, back in 18, if not earlier than that.
18 what?
2018.
1869.
That's my best recollection of what I knew about it.
Economics have changed since then.
They have.
And I believe that was raised to 2,000 based on the city back then, suggesting maybe, I don't remember who was.
I can tell you just from what I've been told, our purchasing manual basically was a copy of the city's purchasing manual.
Okay.
And it was revised to reflect more airport-related type things. But I think some of these dollar amounts were the same. So, now, let me clarify something. So, this Chapter 4B1 would allow the airport manager to purchase anything $5,000 or less. If it's $5,001 up to, let's say, $10,000, if we change these amounts, if you'll notice the amounts there are $2,001 up to $9,999. Then in that case, airport manager's got to come back to the board with 3 informal quotes in writing. The only exception to that, again, and it talks about it down here, it talks about the lowest quote, then airport manager has to come back and explain what his reasoning was and what his recommendation is. So there's another phase of this. If it exceeds, if it's $10,000 or more, then that's when we have to go out with what's listed here as a formal and competitive bid. So there's different levels here that involves the board with respect to work that needs to be done and associated costs within those ranges. So what we're looking at, what Craig and I had talked about was on 4B1, change that to 5.
The 2 to 5.
Yeah, this is just recommendations for discussion, okay? The other thing, so for 4B2, change that to $5,001, but not change the $9,999.99. Leave that at 10. And then 3 wouldn't change at all. If it's 10,000 and above, then we still have the formal competitive bid. So what's the board's thoughts about that?
I don't see a problem with it.
And he also still is required to stay within his budgetary requirements. So it doesn't mean he can just go on a spending spree now. He's still going to be responsible for staying within budget guidelines when possible.
That's correct. All right, let me call your attention to one more. Look on the second page, the emergency purchase. And specifically on 5B and 5C, we have a $5,000 amount in both of those. Do we want to bump that up as well?
I would think so.
What would be a good suggestion from when you guys have been doing this a lot longer than I have?
I think you have to, because you're already giving him permission here if we approve this. So the way we had it,
You gotta stay under 10,000, or you get in Florida chapter 287, which says that you have to have competitive bids.
But does that apply in emergency situations?
Absolutely. Unless it's overridden by the governor.
now,
I'd like to run that by Jim Taylor.
I'd check it, but I believe that even if we decide it's an emergency, doesn't mean that it's an actual emergency. And for emergency purchases, we're talking about in case of an emergency, if we had a hurricane or a
Well, to go
tornado
along
or
with
something.
the stuff in chapter 4, would it not be appropriate to say be capped at 10,000?
No, it's capped at $9,999.99.
are you talking about a declaration of an emergency?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not what this is saying. So if that fuel farm over there fails, and we can't get it to pump, and you've got to call Avicon out here, and they say, in order to get your fuel going again, it's going to cost $12,000 or $9,000. That's what this is. This is not a declaration. It does say declaration, but I don't think it means a governmental declaration. Another thing to consider, and I mentioned this the other day, and I hope I'm not opening a can of worms, but I think, maybe y'all don't realize, maybe you do realize, every time we order a tanker of fuel, that cost to the airport's around $33,000 to $37,000. But the difference is, that's kind of a contract thing. It almost gets back to a sole source. We deal with Titan, they're our dealer. We can't call Shell and then bring us jet fuel. We can't call Phillips 66 and then bring us jet fuel. So that's kind of a sole source contract, if you will.
That's correct.
But
That's why that's different.
this declaration would be if the airport manager doesn't have time to contact the chairman or, bring an emergency meeting together, that this individual would have the authority. So that authority has to be higher than the 5K, because if we change it here, he's already got that.
Yeah, I agree.
You see what I'm saying?
But I think it needs to be limited.
But I understand how your interpretation was.
$9,999.
Yeah, if you're talking about the governor or somebody declaring an emergency, then we would be held by municipal rules under the governance of the state of Florida. This is not, I don't think that's what that's
We start
meant
getting
to be.
reimbursed for that
This is
stuff
for-
later.
This is for an airport or a business
Multi-year
emergency.
process.
Hopefully FEMA would eventually get the reimbursement.
Right, that's why I said a multi-year process.
Yeah, I think the city's probably still waiting on some of that money too. All right, so I like the idea of the suggestion Mr. Seymour has, and I think it will correlate better and back with 4B3, because once you hit that $10,000 amount, then that's when you've got to go out for formal and competitive bids. So if we left it at the $9,999.99, then that would still provide that emergency purchase authority. But I think we all know the way we've always done business here, and with Craig. Craig's going to pick up a phone. He's going to call whoever the chairman is at the time, and probably all of us, and just give you a heads up, say, this is what's happened, here's what the situation is, and then move forward from there. So.
Okay.
And there might be a letter of justification that might need to be written right after, because even if we convey an emergency board meeting, we still have to give 72 hours notice, even for an emergency meeting?
No.
Or we can do it directly?
Yeah.
I mean, immediately?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, 5A also stipulates that anything the manager does, he has to report that at the next meeting. He's got to give a detailed report of what was done, what happened, how we fixed it, here's what it cost, et cetera.
I'll tell you what a good example of that would be, is if you had a breach or something like you were talking about over on the tank, and you had to call an environmental firm, that would clearly be something you've got to take direct action on. That would be the best example I can think of an emergency.
And of course, with that, you would also get EPA in immediately.
Right.
Because they're going to be the final say-so.
And the fines that we could be incurred would far exceed probably what he would spend.
Well,
if you didn't get it.
It depends on if it was a neglect on our part or not.
So what would we be? We'd be changing 4 B1
5B.
We'd change 4B1
to 5,000.
and 4B2 would change to $5,001, but the $9,999
Would remain the same.
would remain the same.
And then
That would be for 4B1 and 2.
Okay, and then for 5B,
B would be 9999.99.
Yeah, and 5C.
And 5C, the
And
same
5C,
thing.
the same
Right.
thing.
okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, would you like to take a stab at a motion here?
Yes, sir, please do.
Okay. I move that we amend our purchasing policy, Chapter 4B, subparagraph 1 to $5,000. That we amend Chapter 4B, subparagraph 2 to $5,001, but less than $999,099. And that in Chapter 5 of the purchasing policy, paragraph B, the airport manager's emergency purchase amount shall be capped at $999,000. $9,999.99.
We don't even have that much money.
And that paragraph C, the airport manager or accountant declares the emergency, that amount in paragraph C should go to $9,999.99.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? I will not try to
Repeat that.
repeat that motion. I won't call on Craig to do it either, although he's taking notes. So all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Let me go back. What,
About a $400 million.
remind me on the appraisal, who made that motion?
I did on the appraisal.
Yes, okay, and
That was seconded, I think.
I seconded it.
Did you do it or Mr. Seamer seconded it?
No.
I think I did, yeah.
okay. All right, that's all I have under my list. Mr. Fryer, airfield update.
Wow. Well, I will yield to Mike on anything he can think of. The only thing I'd like to share, the Falling for the Crawling is this weekend.
Yep.
So Joni's been working on the airport entrance road. We have mowed the entire west end of the field down there where those people will be coming in to give a nice presentation to our airfield. And we will be working on Highway 100, I think, tomorrow, just doing a little cleanup. I did notice they put out the electronic signs. They're not illuminated yet or energized, but they are out there. I think Bradford County does that. And so you can expect a massive amount of traffic. Now, I'm going to try not to jinx it, but the gate is now working at the firm. Probably what they'll do is they'll open it in the mornings and just leave it open and then close it at night. But they are a really good group. A lot of them are law enforcement, firefighters. So when they leave that place and when they're there, there's no trouble. They keep it clean. There's no shenanigans going on over there. So the other thing is, a lot of people don't realize this, but you can go in just as a daily person that doesn't even have a Jeep. You can go in there. It's $10 per person at the gate, I think, if you'd like to go in and look at all that. I believe people that are staying there are paying like $100 or $80 pre-purchase. So I have updated our Facebook page with that information. If you look at the airport Facebook page, it has that information. The second thing I'd like to mention is Camp Crystal is celebrating their 75 years. And I believe, I know it's 2 Saturdays. It is November the 18th, I think, and December 9th. And that is free to go to. You can go in and tour. I'm just trying to see if I can find my posting. Anyway, they're having that this month and next month. So those are 2 events. One's our neighbor, and then one is the firm there, so.
And the Camp Crystal is free.
Yes, Camp Crystal is free. They would like you to RSVP. I put a link to their Facebook page. There's also a, what do you call those things? A QR code that you scan, or a Q, something like that. The only thing I couldn't figure out how to do is, so I put it on my phone and I view it with my phone, how am I going to scan it? So I guess you'd have to print it out, but there is a link you can press on, so.
There's an app you can put on your phone for a QR reader.
Do it? Okay, okay. I know I can scan it with my phone, but if it's on my phone, how am I going to scan it?
Hold up in the mirror.
I know in the, I heard in the gym, there's a lady who's very involved with the Jeep culture that comes out here. She was telling somebody else about it, and she had mentioned that they were selling tickets because they were concerned about capacity. And like, she was telling this guy, you need to go ahead and get your ticket so you can get in. So I don't know if they're just going to open the gate or not to the public. Maybe
And that
they
could
will.
be. Last year, they had 800 Jeeps there, and they're expecting more this year. It is
I heard the
huge.
lady talk about they were expecting overall, I guess with the public, like 3,000.
I couldn't believe it.
Oh, yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, it really is.
Huge event.
I will yield to Mike, but I have one more question. Colonel Allen.
Yes, sir.
I don't get out in the woods very often. Rex is our man on that. And Rex, maybe you can help me out, but,
You want my map?
well, you know where that road from Governor's, okay. So the gate y'all have that comes through, Justin took me out there, we followed the fence line down. And we found an intersection, River Treat Road, is this Treat Road?
Right down.
This Treat Road up here?
Yeah.
So where Treat Road meets this, there's like some deep dirt activity, like you're putting a road in there on the other side of our fence. Is that just a really wide fire lane with tire tracks on it, or is this something
I'm
going
not sure that
on?
would be us. I mean, if we oriented very quickly, we
Well, north up,
could spin it north at the top. So
like this.
I'll check with DPCA. So I thought that might have
See
been
where Treat Road comes? We
Roger.
came down to here, and we came either on this section here,
right.
and Mike, you may even know it, or it may be a, I'm thinking it's on this
that
section.
section there, and it goes all the way to the.
It looks like y'all are making a road in there.
Okay, guys, I don't know if y'all know, but the water project that's ongoing,
Right.
they have started doing site work in Blanding. I was
Okay.
in Saturday a week ago, went
Okay.
into Bowery to fish actually, and there's several track hosts there, there's other equipment. The last Solo newsletter talked about that they are starting now to do the site work here, where the filtration station will be, and where it will dump in Alligator Creek. So that may be some of what you're seing, some of that activity.
It doesn't look like it'd be in that area. I hope they're not dumping.
That sounds
water
like
there,
it's-
'cause there's water standing back there.
Yeah.
We don't want any more water there.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with, Save Our Lakes or anything.
Ring a bell with you?
No,
Or?
not at all. Are you highly confident though that those are our blades and our equipment?
I didn't see any equipment, but we saw a laser transit,
Sure.
and there are some stands in there, hunting stands. I mean, it may be a place where, but it's where Treat Road, if you're heading north on Treat Road, I guess it goes relatively north.
Yes, sir.
It comes to a point where the road, I can see Treat Road right where it intersects our adjoining fence line. And just to the west of that, there is a graded section there that is what, 40 to 60 feet wide?
Is that something Keymores is?
Well, that was the other thing, is could it be Keymores going in there that close?
So they very well could be. So along the boundary, if you will, parallel to Treat, they've started to extend very far south.
Okay,
They're kind of running out of what they're mining. In fact,
okay.
he wanted to jump the North Post and push Anderson, Bartlett, et cetera. He said no to that, kind of cuts in on maneuver. I'll verify, because right now I just wanted to make sure that we're not talking about an area that is west of our boundary. If you're confident-
It's in your property.
Okay, very good. That's what I'm trying to worry on now. I'll check with Major Willard in the morning also. We have pretty frequent meetings right now from Comores based on some other matters. And I'll ask that, because part of what has happened is, well, being Rod and Gun Club are sometimes a bit of a barometer for what's going on out there, because when they start losing hunting land.
Right.
But I'll verify that. I thought relative to a fire break that you were maybe describing.
Usually a fire break is disked. This is like graded. I mean, did you see it?
We couldn't get down there.
You couldn't get that
Too
far.
wet.
The concern I have, and Mike said it could be Chemours, is if they're gonna start doing mining, what's that gonna do to the watershed on our side of the fence?
Understood.
It's already wet back there.
Yes, sir.
It might be dried out now. Maybe it's something, I mean, if you have one day in the next couple or 3 weeks, if you could come over and get with Mike, or Mike, I could get Justin to take him out there, but I do know Street Road makes a curve there, and it's right where those two, where our fence takes a 90 and heads, I think it's heading west. And it's already wet on our side there, and then we saw the road built up there, and we mentioned it to Mike when we came back, and Mike said, well, what if it's Chemours? And then I thought, wow, if they start mining there, what's that gonna do to the water on our side of the fence? It might help it, I don't know.
Right, well, Roger.
So,
Well, wait till
anyway,
that transpires. Now, before I depart, I'll get a picture and we'll orient that back to it, because there has been an occasion when, despite what the MOA says with Chemours, we show up and there's a bit of a vast wasteland.
okay,
And they're pretty efficient when they start clearing land.
right,
Yes, sir, I'll run that ground first thing in the morning.
okay. And any other word on that request I had for the carport about 3 months ago or 4 months ago down there for your or any paratroopers?
So brief swell, as we're fond of saying. So quite frankly, not to expound too much, kind of two initiatives going on. I'm not quite sure who Colonel Hunt had spoken with. I'm trying to look up the appropriate acronym. Defense Infrastructure Pilot. Are you aware of that, sir?
Craig and I had a meeting with Colonel Hunt,
Okay, good.
conference call with respect to the Florida State Guard.
So hold there.
Okay.
And not Wanamaker, one of these other gentlemen that Colonel Hunt's still trying to pin down. Point is, we were first approached about the Clay County Fire Station, way up 21. So there's a defense infrastructure pilot program that last year Florida picked up about, I think, as many as 8 of about 20 projects. They awarded certain criteria. What it is the dollar can't be spent on the installation. It has to be spent on area infrastructure that the installation will benefit from. So I'll just touch on it, and I'll send Colonel Van Zandt some material just so you can be read up. We simply pulled it off the web. But it's a grant writing competition, if you will, and Eglin scored, a bunch of folks scored. But one of the ideas was, and I thought Major Willard had spoken to a representative, the idea was to get after, oddly enough, just what you were speaking to, stormwater runoff and those kinds of things. And they all seem to be right around the, go ahead, sir.
No, go ahead, but
It's going to be in the area of about $6 to $8 million projects. So I don't know what you have underway on that kind of planning. And we don't know if it was free money, ARPA money, what the scenario was. And for all practical purposes, we don't know if 100 applied and only 31, or maybe all 30 of 30 got a dollar. But we talked about a little bit of a laydown farm for tractor trailers. The particular dollar we would be chasing, sir, can't be built on the installation. So we kicked that. We had about 5 projects. One was sometimes ammo trucks get stuck out on 16, or they got a bunch of Humvees and they can't get in the gate and they gotta wait, they don't know. But if you will, what does that do in the off season? Is it lit? Is it all that kind of infrastructure? The other was, hey, let's go ahead and build the shed. It's a pole barn today. Next year, a piece of dollar goes, drop some walls to it, put some lighting, et cetera. And then you almost end up with a hangar. So we had modeled that largely after a possibly a fire station or somewhere to put your fuel trucks just underneath overhead cover. that if the paratroopers show up, please pull it out and give them green ramp time to sit there in their chutes and do the thing. But what we found a lot of from an operation perspective is they're largely doing that out of Cecil Field, because it's rarely just a load. And then I'm speaking of other units, because the SF is sometimes wanting to go. Last time I think the SF drove all the way up. There's a little bit of friction there.
They did good at Cecil, I think.
Yeah.
There was
so-
something about them going up there to get everything prepped, and then they came here and jumped.
It's more suitable because if the aircraft isn't jammed properly and gets bumped, they can leave all their kit on Florida Guard property. They don't have to keep box trucking it back from port. So that did not get great legs. The other initiative that's going on at Blanding is largely, and Colonel Hunt's a master of it, having operated in the Commander's Action Group. You folks certainly know better than I. I guess Florida had a banner year during the COVID time period. So there is lots of money intended to flow. That's what a lot of the smoke is at Blanding. We're clearing blocks, so not just 4,600 neighborhood. We're gonna build a 3,700 neighborhood. The counter drug the sheriff spoke of is trapped money. It's fenced, comes directly from Bureau, and it's forfeit seizure business. But the expectation is that Blanding may see as much as $400 million, which is just some crazy, or a crazy amount, over the next 4 to 5 years. So we've met with Mr. I think Chris Spencer, the governor's OPB guy, Office of Policy and Budget, to start putting, if you will, a template against that. So what we looked at was, hey, what could we do? So there's a little bit of fluff in that at year 3. The first, this year, next year, and the year after are already spoken for, because we obviously had to put line item items against chunks of change. What I'm ignorant about is, I don't know where the dollar's gonna go if the governor's up and gone in a short period of time. But right now, I think we've trapped money out through 25. And those are projects to get after Blanding, new housing, things like that. So Colonel Van Zandt can tell you, military construction is an 8 to 10 year project in the Guard. The Army obviously moves a little faster. But with the governor's dollar, state dollar, it's a matching piece, get the appropriation, that can happen in 18 months. So we're getting after a few projects, but this particular defense infrastructure, I think it's DIPCA, grant competition, I've gotten Major Willard, and he said he was aware, I think it may have gotten discussed, might have been this gentleman spoke to back when, there's some kind of stormwater business you got going on out here. And I don't know if that's the terrain we're talking about. Go ahead, sir.
So we had in that conversation, that conference call, Major Willard was on the phone as well, but Crawford Powell, who's with Clay, Florida Economic Development, Crawford had brought that defense initiative funding, grant funding, and Craig and I sat and had that meeting with him as well. And they were looking at, well, maybe because we do have a stormwater project in our master plan, and it's actually in our JSIP, that possibly some of those funds could go toward that. So I think they were looking for some qualifying shovel-ready type projects.
So that's all we came up with.
Yeah.
So all the eggs are gonna go into that one basket. Can't take place on the installation, but if you will, as we were fond of saying overseas, is that, you know, the HA, humanitarian aid, don't just take it to the guy on the hilltop, that'll help, but your biggest intelligence source is right outside our wire. So with that analogy, the intent was spend the dollar at Keystone. So I don't know where Major Willard is on that with his staff. The intent was to write the grant as best we can to our ability. And again, it really goes back to this whole competition piece. What's not clear in the literature that we were able to pull from is whether that's a 2 to 3 year contest, if you will, or they turn the entire thing in a year. Because when you look at all these projects, and also this Colonel Van Zandt, as I spoke to, when you look at these things, they don't seem incredibly complex. Some of it is as easy as, you know, Valparaiso or Santa Rosa, whoever Edmund shares the airstrip with, they just went to the other side of the airfield and built some hangars. Because it gave them, if you will, that is tied directly to supporting the military's intent. But if you will, it can't be exclusively for the military. If you will, sir, going back, sorry about the long-winded answer to the pole barn piece, if that were ever to get done, I think when the state dollar would come, I think that's a little more gray than the black and white of the federal dollar having to be spent on the installation. Because we can say, hey, it's right next to this gate that we have that ties to those things. It sounds like it's a little too small for this degree, this defense infrastructure piece.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, is we don't need an $800,000 pavilion down there. I just want a $4,500 carport so your troops don't have to stand in the sun out there and in the rain. But sounds like we're gonna have to do it ourselves somehow at some point if we want to do it.
Well, let's flesh that out.
So that's a good place. So when we go and talk to the SF side from an operational perspective, like, hey, we're kind of, so good point. They may gap us off a little bit. And the reality is, in 2 weeks' time, you're sitting there looking at them.
It's just too small a project. It doesn't show up on the radar. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for checking in.
Yes, sir.
What's interesting about that program as well, when Crawford brought it to us, when you look at the literature though, actually the dates, it's expired as far as the time, unless they're looking at dollars for next year.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Because what they had brought to us was for this year, and those timeframes had already expired. So Crawford wasn't sure. I think he and Laura were going to follow up with finding out if, like you had mentioned earlier, are they going to do it again this year?
Right.
And then how long is it going to stay or be funded?
Yes,
So there's still those questions out there as well.
We're tracking that, and we're also bouncing that off so who really has that mastery is the CFO, the Construction Facilities Maintenance Office. They're the ones that are supposed to go up, identify that grant piece, and they're the ones with all the smart engineer writers. Yes, sir, more to follow on that. Will do.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Would you just let Mike address anything do you have anything, Mike, for the?
The only thing is the gates are all now operational. The parking lot gate got a new board. It cost about $700. But all the gates are working now and all our periphery is intact.
And the fuel farm pump?
I ordered a kit for the avgas pump to have one on hand. If something were to happen to that, we'd be able to respond to it a lot quicker. And that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Okay.
All right. Moving on, Mr. Ludwig.
I'll just kind of give an update real quick on the emergency response plan. A few days back, Mr. Kuhn had reached out to me and had said he'd come across information in in reviewing previous meeting minutes and had seen that I had been working on that. And so we were able to get together and kind of get it back up and running again and kind of put it on hold because of all the other issues we were doing at the time. And I figured between switching out managers that it would be something to kind of put on hold for a little bit so I could have input from the new airport manager. So we were able to kind of sit down and kind of start that again. With that emergency response plan, there is two separate plans to that. There's the internal one and the external one. Internal would be more what the airport does in the event of an emergency. And Kuhn is looking at some things and had sent me some information for like the FDOT. And they have some templates in there. I've been able to reach out to some people that I'm familiar with up in the Jacksonville area with some of the airports to see if I can have access to some of their emergency response plans to kind of get an idea of the possible templates we could use to kind of help guide us along in that process. It's not something we can just go and they can give me a copy to bring because there is security information and they don't like to just put that stuff out there. But I do believe I have access or will potentially be able to get access to some that may benefit us in that situation. And as far as the external one, that was the one I had started working on before at the very beginnings. And I've been able to reach out to Bradford County and have a good point of contact, and also with Clay County with fire departments on both of those. And I've just kind of explained to them what we're wanting to do and what we're going to try to put together. And they were both pretty excited about that and said they would be, looking forward to doing whatever and making it happen. So I kind of gave them an idea that we might be spring-ish or so by the time we get that whole thing together and get it organized. And there'll be a little bit of logistics to that because the fire department world works in 3 shifts. So in order to cover the right amount of people, you would have to hit all 3 shifts, and there would be some logistics here as well. So, but that's kind of back up and running again, and appreciate Craig reaching out to me. I wasn't going to bombard him. I wanted to give him time to kind of get up and running because I know he's got a lot of other things on his plate. So I appreciate him reaching out to me and us being able to get back moving on that, moving forward. And that's all I have.
All right, excellent. Mr. Seamer?
Okay, well, I got with Mr. Corby out at Landon, and we rode around, and he made a ton of suggestions. And I'm actually, if the GIS system would have been working, I would have been a little bit better than this, because he would have been able to print out and show out exactly how many acres in each one. And you'd have to go from this to that to our proposed development area. And this area up in here, up to the road, the access road, not over here to the Florida, what used to be the Florida Trails, but clear cutting this. If it's going to be done in little sections, if you do this little section here, we get no money from the woods that are being cut. They're just going to be cut, burned, hauled off, whatever, mulched, and that's it. Where he said if we went in and did the whole thing at one time, we would be able to make money off of it. He said, because if this is where the closest, newest development's going to be, is in this area here, then we need to clear cut this, because if you just try to do it piecemeal by piecemeal as you get somebody that's interested in it, then you don't make any money.
Costing too much to mobilize and all that.
Right, and it will actually save anybody that's looking to come in here, because they don't have to remove the trees and dispose of them. So we would make the money, it would go in to our coffers instead of just being put up in smoke.
Did he elaborate on, I know there's a term they use as far as marketable timber, as far as the size of the trees?
He said that all those up front were.
Were?
Yes.
Excellent.
Now, of course, we didn't go way back up in here. You know, we stayed on where the access road is, and we drove a little ways down here, but then it got wet, and I said, I'm not getting stuck, and I turned around. And we came down here a little ways and the same thing, and then we cut across where they had dumped all that junk at 30 years ago.
Yep.
That's out here. But this side, he said that we have in the Florida Trail area, the old Florida Trail area, he would recommend doing a burn. He said there's enough young trees out there that we probably would not have to replant. That all we would need to do is, in this section here, even though these are planted pines and these are harvestable, but he wants this section here burned. And then you go to a bigger map. This is the back of the runway where it was Mr. Richard had, or I think had.
That was off of 11. We did that to clear the approach, the glide slope.
Okay. To plan it again, if we were, this is.
That's upside down.
No, that's, yeah.
Orient the thing with the,
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
North up, yeah.
So this is 1129 and 523. This area back here that had been cleared and everything, He says that needs to be replanted. And he says, if you're doing the longleaf pine, you have to have basically 100-year, we're not going to mess with it, we're going to maintain it for 100 years. And that comes in with thinning it, just not sitting out there forever, but it has to be thinned and everything else. The section that we looked at with the oaks and everything, with the planted pines there, which is this area here, this is Treat Road here. He said every third row needs to come out because it is way, way, way over the limit on how much fire load you'd have. Because most of the junk in between the trees are 2/3 up the trees. And he said, as small as the trees are, it would take them out. They would die.
That's that third row,
Yeah, he said.
third row selector, whatever they call it. or
Yeah.
Thinning it, yeah.
Yeah.
And they just go in there every third row, and he said, and those people, that's all they do, is every third row. They won't come in and do all the, full lane, cut.
Is that dry back in there, or is that where a lot of?
There are some ponds that are kind of wet.
Right.
And this is the third, and then most of the wet areas right along in here.
I think that's where we saw it too, yeah.
And then along 1129, after talking to Craig and hearing what they were saying, on this side of the transmission line, clear cut even, and he said that maybe we could, where Florida Rally is, those trees we could harvest. Is that correct or incorrect?
At the firm?
They are our trees as well.
They're ours. We have timber rights to all.
Okay.
Yes.
So clear cut those, and the money needs to go into a special fund because it costs a lot of money to have burners come out and burn the property.
And replanting the trees is expensive too, I think.
Well, the replanting and with the longleaf pine, he said you can probably get a grant, but they're going to want to see a 50 to 75 to 100 year. You're not just every 20 years going to be looking for more money. He said it needs to be more of a conservation type thing, and that's what I was thinking about back in this area here. But they get up to 100 feet. And I don't know.
Yeah, they could present a problem with the. Yeah.
With
The approach, the
approach
RPC.
and takeoff.
Reproduction.
So we'd have to look more into that and maybe just stay with the slant or slash pines in this area. But we could probably
Yeah, that area there,
plant
you could
here.
go. Yeah.
And depending on how much they wanted of this for the special project, come in and replant the longleaf pine in that area too. Leaving this open basically for the future leasees. They can beautify it however they'd like.
Right.
This area is more of,
There's just wild growth in there, I think, a lot of
Yeah.
this, isn't it? Like a combination.
yeah,
Pines,
it,
Oaks, blackjack, everything
Right.
in there.
but it's going to need to be in a burn program also, just to keep the fire load down.
And they'll burn the fuel off the ground, like underneath it, kind of get it to go
Yeah.
through quickly.
Right. And the nice thing about doing a longleaf pine is that we can also sell the pine needles. big market in pine needles. Blanding sells a ton of pine needles.
What do they use it for? What's it used for?
You're like,
Pine
what
needle.
about wood? You're like, what?
Oh, okay, just for flower beds and stuff like that, okay.
Yeah, instead of more.
So, Mr. Seaver,
40 to 50,000 that y'all
Yes, sir.
yeah,
off of it.
yeah.
So
Yes, that.
So as far as the burning areas, I know we've tried to work with Forestry Service in the past. Did Mr. Corby have any recommendations on how to go about
he
getting that done?
yeah, he's going to give me a list of authorized burning companies. He's also going to give me a list of what they use to harvest, so that they know how the process bidding has got to be done and everything. And like I said, if the GIS would have been working on his computer, I would have had all that, but it wasn't working, and evidently something's up. I don't know.
So
And he got
between the
busy.
two of y'all, y'all gonna put together a strategy and a plan,
Yes.
timeline for
Right.
recommendation?
A short term, like the front, that's going to be,
Yeah, the
you know,
west side.
and develop. That's going to be our short term. The middle term will be the harvesting of all the rest of the trees. And then the long term is going to be the replanting as we get the money to replant and burn.
Where would the thinning process come in? Would that be in the short term?
Yeah, that would be in the middle of the short. But it would all depend upon getting people that wouldn't charge us an arm and a leg to burn is the biggest thing. But with that fire load, that back section over there, he goes, it'll be a mess.
Well, no, we lost a
Lose a
bunch
lot
of
of
timber,
trees.
what year, like 06 or 96 or,
I think the fires were
98.
98, yeah,
that was that on the North Point.
yeah.
One other thing that Brent over here at the racetrack told me, and it wasn't that I didn't believe it, I just never heard it before, but he did predict it. Those trees we took off the end of runway 11 for the approach, he said each one of those pine trees will absorb 500 to 600 gallons of water.
Oh, yeah.
So when we did it, he says water's going to come back in here, and lo and behold, it did. Does this man talk about, do they look at slope or where that water's running to?
As far as Mr. Corby,
We'd have to do that ourselves or evaluate it? Okay.
yeah, and that would come back in under maybe ACOM or to give us recommendations on how to set up a proper ditching area and then putting in culverts.
Okay.
But the other thing that we have to bring up is the fire breaks. He was kind of hot and heavy about that. Mowing it's fine, but when it dries out, you still have the access that it's going to run across.
And how,
We talking about those, is that next to the fence?
Yes.
Fences?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Putting in, we have a set of discs down there, 4-foot set. It's nothing more than dropping them in the ground and running over it 2 or 3 times. Now, I know that the mowing season is still going on because
slowed down
it's
a
not
lot.
as bad, but
how wide does a fire break need to be?
it's supposed to be 4 foot.
That's all?
Yeah,
So that just keeps the ground fuel from burning along there.
correct.
That doesn't help you if you got a wind and it's,
If you get a head fire, the only thing a head fire is going to do is jump.
okay.
Once it gets up into a head fire, it's just going to jump and run.
Probably get the disking going again, and I think there was some complaints before about the trucks getting stuck. But that gets back to our truck out here, we don't have a 4-wheel drive if we have to run the line.
We do have the side-by-side that would handle it, but that's sugar sand. But we can probably look at.
But it's just something that he says, you know, if a fire started, and especially down here, you know,
It'd be off to the races.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about our Camp Landing side? Now, we don't see any going on over there anymore. Have y'all kind of stopped that because you're doing your controlled burns or?
So I think it's a combination of that. If you're on 16, there's quite the slash and burn.
Yeah.
In fact, a little bit to the chagrin of Jim Hoskins, he likes a bit of a buffer just for standoff. But Corby 8 makes a very good argument about when they burn, they worry about something jumping and occurring. So what he'll do is he'll patchwork various areas.
Yeah.
Largely what you're speaking of, I think, is non-negotiable for him to have to get after, because it's not maneuver area for troops.
Right.
But right now, he's working hard off on the 16 on the south side of the coast. But I'll take some of this back. When the water I wasn't tracking on, and quite frankly, how expansive we were talking about this DCIP business, this could possibly be worked into that. Because like we've spoken to, I'm not sure what his targeted area was on this piece.
Okay.
So I've got some notes here of what Corby goes back to.
Okay. Then the wounded warrior hunts, I know that Mr. Richard was in charge of that because I guess he was the conservationist out here, and I understand he's still doing it. I would like to be kept into the loop on that since it falls under my.
I didn't think they did anything this year.
I don't think they have, and I
Spring gobbler season, but I don't think they have anything.
I've wondered myself why I hadn't been out here,
The
so.
fall hunt, and they typically do that in October when it's archery season.
Right.
I know Sportsman's Club has worked with them in the past, but I don't think
He didn't
Mr.
come this
Richard,
year.
well, I don't think you've met Mr. Richard, but I know he's not contacting me about anything, so.
I guess I'll go down to Soldiers Freedom Outdoors and.
I don't know if he went through them. He was going through the Forestry Service, and they had contacts with Wounded Warrior. I believe that was the connection. But why don't we just get Mr. Richard's information to you and give him a call, and two of y'all can coordinate together, and because it's almost too late now. I mean, Camp Landing, November the 20th, the gate in Treat Road will be open for hunting in that south range. But January sometime that closes up. So it's probably too late for the air ops. That's what was always done here at the airport. A spring gobbler hunt normally, and then in the fall, early fall, an archery hunt for a weekend is all they had the guys out here. So I'd like to see that started back up. It was a great service.
I would love to do it.
Yep.
I was under the impression that Mr. Richard was still doing that. He did, he did the spring.
He did it the spring, but he hadn't done it in the fall.
Yeah.
And
His donors lined up and stuff too. I think he had some groups that were donating money because
Yeah, we just need to get the two of them together and see if we can
maybe see if we can get it
resurrected.
rekindled.
if I would have known, I would have started earlier, but I was like, well, nobody's, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, so
Excuse me.
I'll contact the wounded warrior.
Archery season, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
in October. All right, anything else?
No, sir, that's
All right. All right, Miss Tina hasn't been wagging her finger at me, but I think we've only got like 7 minutes left of YouTube video time. So, Fred?
Why am I the last?
Well, actually, the mayor's gonna follow you, so. So y'all gotta make it quick.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to lay it out in in a format that made sense in terms of our insurance concerns.
And if we run out of time, I was teasing about that.
Yeah.
This is more important than
No, I understand.
whatever time it takes.
Yep. And I gave us, have you seen any of this information? I'll let you look at it while I talk. So the insurance summary that I included in the packet is current. All of our policies are now renewed and every number is accurate. And you can see our total annual payments for the year in premiums is currently $113,642.19. That's an insane amount of money. In the next page, I just included our current budget. What we have budgeted for this year was only $90,000. And that was assuming some type of increase from last year.
That was a $20,000 increase, wasn't it?
$15,000.
Yeah,
Right.
we budgeted in.
Right. So then the third page that I included was really kind of important and what we need to determine here this evening is the board's choice in how to proceed with the policy. And this is the named storm coverage for our property, so hangars and things like that. They do give us options to essentially increase the risk on your behalf and pay less premium, but you have to determine what your options on.
By raising the deductible, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, from 5% to 7.5% or 10%. Even if you go with the highest deductible, you're still gonna pay $10,000 more than we paid last year. That's the best you can do. But you're also assuming $150,000 in extra risk by doing that. So two things that you need to do, I guess we need to do, or the board needs to decide upon is the option that you want to go with in terms of deductible. That's number one. And number two would be then to amend the budget to reflect that change.
And that is on named storms. That's hurricanes, tropical storms, tropical depressions.
Yeah, and so our FMIT insurance contact said this is the biggest change of the year. It affected everybody. A lot of other airports and municipalities have decided to increase deductibles, but it varies.
I can say, and I appreciate all the work Craig's done on this. He and I had started working on this, and one of the difficult things, we didn't have a good contact person, and Craig was able to make those connections and get these other options, because before we were never given any options.
No.
And
I had to ask.
yes, so thankfully, he did that, and it's just crazy how much it's gone up. But as he learned, and we've all heard probably on the news, state of Florida, we're seeing it all the way across the state.
The legislature's got, what, 3 items they're addressing this week in special session, and property insurance.
Yep, property insurance is one of
I
them.
was gonna say, yeah, if any of us, my insurance on my house has doubled just in 1 year, so it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
Across the board. Now, I think I told you that a friend of mine, he was a geology major. He works for Alachua County Health Department, but they have statistical information throughout the state of Florida on hurricane landfall probabilities that follow a pretty routine thing. But as sure as we decide to go up on that, it'll hit here and it'll break all those records.
I thought of that, sure.
So there is a certain amount of risk that's obviously at hand. And depending upon how many structures it got here, the old hangar up front, that roof was put on in 1972. It needs attention now on the big hangar. And then this one over here was around 1979 there, the Rocklands had the green awnings. So those are both old roofs.
Well, I did the math on $3 million loss, which would have to be several buildings to even get to that point, but.
Okay. And what did it look like if we went to 7.5% of that?
150,000 deductible where we're at now. And by the way, this is named storm coverage is separate from our other deductibles. Those are $10,000, but you get into named storm and now you're into percentages.
You get into that higher deductible amount.
Right.
With the named storm.
And how much do we save? What's the net savings per year?
You're essentially saving $10,000 in premium per level, give or take.
So, yeah, if we had to borrow that amount of money for a deductible, I mean, but we could set aside that money in a special
Contingency
fund or contingency, but the problem is we're not allowed to invest any of our monies, like in the stock